Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic from birth, was sent to France because of Protestant conflicts. When she was 15, she tied the knot with the next in line to the French crown. But by the time she was 18, she became a widow. The year is 1561. Mary comes back to Scotland and meets her Protestant half-brother, James Moray. They see each other after so long and give each other a warm hug. James is curious if Mary plans to stay long. She asks him if he'd like her to leave. But James says no and leads her to her room. Later on, James wants Lord Bothwell, who looks after Mary's safety, to step out. But Bothwell stands his ground. He made a promise to Mary's mother to always be there for Mary. James wonders if Bothwell has a hidden reason. But Bothwell says he's just doing what he promised. Now, the Queen of England feels uneasy because Mary is back. After all, Mary has a strong claim to the English crown. Lord Randolph tells Elizabeth, the Queen, that Mary is in Scotland. Elizabeth wonders where James stands on all of this. Randolph calms her, saying James is still with them, looking out for the Protestant Church. But William Cecil, another important person, is worried. He thinks James might not stop Mary if she tries to become queen. But Randolph has faith in James. Elizabeth tells Randolph to send a note to Scotland. She says she'll care for Mary's family if they show her the same care. Cecil feels Elizabeth should have a baby. That way, Mary won't be able to claim the throne. In another place, David Rizzio, who works for Mary, sings a song. After the song, Mary tells him to send a letter to Elizabeth. She says she won't try to be queen if Elizabeth makes her the next in line. To show goodwill, she sends a painting of herself to Elizabeth. Seeing this, Elizabeth feels a bit jealous. She thinks Mary, being younger and beautiful, might be a threat. Cecil talks to Robert Dudley, another important person and someone close to Elizabeth. He thinks Dudley should marry Elizabeth and have a baby. But Dudley says Elizabeth doesn't want to marry. She's scared that the man will try to become king. Cecil is worried. If Mary has a baby before Elizabeth, it will be bad for them. Lennox talks to Cecil. He wants to go to Scotland and help Mary because they both believe in the Catholic faith. But Cecil says no. He thinks Lennox will make things worse. In Scotland, Queen Mary tells her people she will be fair to both Catholic and Protestant beliefs. But John Knox, a big name in the Scottish Church, doesn't trust her. Mary's connection to the Pope makes John Knox uneasy. He also doesn't like the idea of a woman leading. Upset by his opposition, Mary sends Knox away from the council. After a council meeting, James asks Mary to think again about her decision on Knox because he's important for the country. But Mary doesn't change her mind. She wants to show she's strong. Elizabeth, through Randolph, sends word to Mary. She hints Mary should marry an English Protestant. Mary answers, saying that who she marries is up to God and jokes that maybe Elizabeth should get married too. Knox warns his church people about Mary. In a meeting, Cecil thinks Mary might choose a Catholic man to marry. Randolph points out that Mary has strong supporters. So, they think about marrying her to someone from the English council to control her. Elizabeth suggests her close friend, Dudley, as a match for Mary. But at night, Dudley tells Elizabeth he only wants her, not Mary. Still, Elizabeth pushes him to think about marrying Mary. The next day, Dudley and Randolph go to see Mary. Elizabeth has sent a letter with Randolph. She hopes Mary will consider Dudley as a husband and wants the two queens to meet. But Mary says it's too soon to talk about marriage. First, Elizabeth should say that Mary will be the next queen. Also, they should plan a time for both queens to see each other. On the day they're supposed to meet, Mary, her people, and Randolph are on their way. But they hear that Elizabeth can't come because she has French visitors. Mary asks Randolph to stay in Scotland for the night. She says he can bring Beaton, his girlfriend and also Mary's helper, with him. In the evening, there's a big party in Mary's home. Away from the fun, Beaton and Randolph get close. Beaton then tells Mary a secret: Elizabeth didn't have any French visitors. Actually, Elizabeth got sick with a bad skin sickness. Thinking Elizabeth might die soon, Mary writes her a note. She hints she knows about Dudley and Elizabeth. She'll marry Dudley, but only if she's promised to be the next queen. After reading the note, Elizabeth worries. She might lose her place as queen and Dudley to Mary. Dudley tries to make her feel better. He says he'll always pick Elizabeth over Mary. Mary and her helpers have fun dressing Rizzio like a woman. Rizzio says he feels happy dressed that way. Looking good. James then brings in family members, Lord Lennox and his son, Henry. Henry tells Mary that Elizabeth allowed him and his dad to come back home to help Mary. On a walk, Mary tells Henry she thinks he might want her throne. But Henry says he only wants to be her husband. Later that night, Mary and Henry are together in her room with Rizzio standing watch outside. Elizabeth's advisors tell her it's bad if two Catholics get married because they both have a claim to be the rulers of England. Elizabeth says that Mary is just doing what she asked by marrying an Englishman. When her advisors suggest offering Dudley as a husband to Mary, Elizabeth says no. On the other hand, Mary's own advisors tell her it might be risky to marry an Englishman like Henry. He might try to take over as King of Scotland. Mary tells them not to worry. Henry has said he'll just be her husband and nothing more. She asks them to help her get the other leaders to agree. Henry asks Mary to marry him on a mountain and she says yes. But then Randolph comes with a message from Elizabeth. Elizabeth wants Henry to come back to England. Mary says no, she will marry Henry even if Elizabeth doesn't like it. Mary also says that she will have a baby who will be the ruler of England. This makes everyone surprised. She tells the guards to make Randolph leave. James tells Mary she's making a big mistake. He says her choices could start a big fight. He asks her not to marry Henry. But Mary says she will do what she wants. She tells James he can go if he doesn't like it. Elizabeth talks with Cecil. He tells her she should marry Dudley and have babies. She doesn't trust men much. Cecil says they could start a fight in Scotland to make things hard for Mary. Elizabeth agrees but doesn't want to know everything. Cecil and James think about going against Mary. Even with all this happening, Mary and Henry get married. At their party, Henry drinks too much and acts badly. Rizzio takes him away. Later, Mary finds Henry and Rizzio close in bed. Rizzio says sorry and Mary tells him to be careful. She supports him. When she hears that there's going to be a fight, she gets ready to face James. Henry tells her to wait for James to come to them. But Mary wants to go find him. Bothwell has a plan to surprise James's fighters and Mary says yes. In the fight, James tries to run away. But Mary tells Bothwell to let him go. Many of James's men don't survive. That night, Henry doesn't want to be close with Mary but changes his mind later. When Mary says she's going to have a baby, she tells everyone that her child will be the ruler of both England and Scotland. This makes Randolph and Maitland argue. Maitland says Mary doesn't listen to the council. Randolph says that when Mary has her baby, Henry and his dad won't be important anymore. Elizabeth hears from Cecil about what Mary has said, but she stays silent. Meanwhile, Randolph, Maitland, James, and Lennox make a plan to make Henry king to make Mary less powerful. Henry asks Mary why he isn't king yet. She changes the subject, saying she's thankful for their coming baby. Knox spreads word that Mary might have been unfaithful to Henry with Rizzio. This makes people question if Mary's baby is really Henry's. Lennox forces Henry to sign a paper that says Mary was unfaithful and that Rizzio should die, by saying he'd tell everyone about Henry's secret with Rizzio. Later, some men try to catch Rizzio while he's with Mary. He tries to hide behind Mary, but they push her away and end up killing Rizzio. Bothwell thinks he might be in danger next and hides. Mary tells Henry and Maitland they're behind all this. Maitland says they won't hurt her. Mary thinks Henry could be in danger too and says they should run away. At the palace, Maitland and James want Henry to get Mary to forgive the men who planned against her. But he says no, turning his back on them. Mary and Henry run to a safe place, where Henry is put in a room. Mary gets a paper from James and Maitland that shows Henry was against her, so she forgives them. Then she says she'll name her baby after James. She writes to Elizabeth, asking her to be the baby's godmother. After her son is born, Elizabeth says Mary will take her place when she's gone. Henry has to leave, and Mary's friends say she should leave him. Bothwell tells her to be careful of Henry, but she doesn't listen. Maitland tricks Bothwell into getting rid of Henry, telling him he'll be king. Henry's home catches fire, and he dies trying to get out. Bothwell tells Mary they should move to be safe. Living in Bothwell's place, Mary hears that her leaders want her to marry Bothwell. She doesn't want to, but she feels she has to so Bothwell will keep her safe. Knox tells people that Mary might have had Henry killed so she could marry again. This makes many people not like her. Maitland and James tell Mary and Bothwell to step down to avoid more trouble. James tells Mary to leave her son and go, saying he'll look after things till the boy is grown. But Mary wants to fight and asks Elizabeth for help. Elizabeth tells Mary she can come to England but says not to make trouble. Mary says she'll only do that if she has to. Once in England, Mary is blamed for a big crime. Elizabeth decides Mary must die and sends her a note before the act, explaining that it's not about guilt, but she needs to show strength. As her end nears, Mary hopes aloud that her son James might one day lead both England and Scotland, creating harmony. Elizabeth doesn't marry or have kids in her 45 years as queen. Eventually, Mary's wish becomes reality. Her son James becomes the ruler of both lands, joining them together.